Andy, Melanie, do you want to get started?
Yeah, I'm ready if you are.
Let's do it. Let's
Okay.
do it.
So my name is Ben Richards. I'm going to quickly introduce Mandy and Melanie. I'm happy to introduce them for their talk From Passive Learners to Co-Creators, a case study on open pedagogy in first year writing. Melanie Gagich is a senior college lecturer and director for the first year writing program at Cleveland State University. She has a PhD from Indiana University of Pennsylvania, and her research is focused on digital literacy and multimodal composition. An OER she co-authored, A Guide to Rhetoric, Genre, and Success in First Year Writing, has saved almost $1,500,000 for almost 20,000 students at CSU alone. Mandi Goodsett is the Performing Arts and Humanities Librarian, as well as the Open Education and Copyright Advisor at CSU's Michael Schwartz Library. She holds a Master's of Library Science from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and a Master of Education in Adult Learning and Development from Cleveland State University. She's published extensively in topics including, but not limited to, sustainability in libraries, information literacy, and open education. And among other awards and honors, she was recently selected to receive the J. Ladd Distinguished Service Award from the Academic Library Association of Ohio. I'll say that they both demonstrate so much care for their peers and their students and for education in general. And we're lucky to have both Mandi and Melanie as colleagues here at CSU, as members of the OpenCon Ohio Planning Committee, and to hear them speak today. So please welcome Mandi and Melanie.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ben. And thank you everybody who is here. And also thank you to the speakers that we've had so far, and also to all of our lightning round speakers. This is just such a wonderful opportunity that I look forward to every spring. So thank you. And thanks again, Ben. Those were lovely words. Okay, so Mandi and I are going to be co-presenting. We're going to go back and forth. And at some point, we will put the link to our presentation in the chat and also in Discord. So Ben already went over the title, so you know what you're here for. So Mandi, if you want to go ahead and give the directions for our polls.
Yes, we could just use the chat, but and you're welcome to do that if you would like. But if you are interested in using our Poll Everywhere poll, we would love to know how familiar you are with. We'll start with here. I'm going to put the link in the chat again. With open education, are you A, totally unfamiliar? This would be a very confusing conference for you, but that could be you. B, somewhat familiar, you've tried it, but you don't know what it is. C, pretty familiar, you have explored or used openly licensed material. Or D, very familiar, maybe you've written open content or you're a strong advocate. And please let me know if my link is not working. And also note that you do not have to register or put your name in. You can skip past those. They make that kind of hidden, but you do not have to. Okay, so it's not working for you. Anybody else? You can put in the chat if you would like. Okay, getting some in the chat as well. Seems like we have a lot of people who are very familiar. Okay, we're having problems. So if you encounter even the slightest bit of trouble, don't worry about it, just put it in the chat. Translating to its own link. That's weird. Okay, D. Very familiar. Okay, great. Thank you. That's very helpful. Not terribly surprising, but very helpful. Thanks, Jeff. Skip the registration. You do not need to do that. B and C. Okay. Hand typing, it worked. Yeah, we may not be able to do. Yes, thank you. Yeah, we may not be able to have everyone respond in Poll Everywhere anyway. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. We have another one for you, but it sounds like most folks are at least somewhat familiar and possibly very familiar. Okay. Let me share this slide. Okay, your question should change if you're in Poll Everywhere. Now we want to know how familiar you are with open pedagogy as opposed to open education. Oh, now everybody's got it. Now they're being very speedy. Okay. Now we have at least a few not familiar at all. Somewhat familiar. Okay. Okay, we're getting a lot more somewhat familiar or very familiar. Okay. That is going to be our topic today. So do not worry if you are not super familiar with open pedagogy. We're going to talk about it. And for those who are more familiar, hopefully you'll get some new ideas for how to implement this in your classes. So thanks everybody for participating. We'll have one more at the end for you to fill out. One more poll everywhere.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much for, trying out that new technology. So as Mandi said today, we're going to be talking about open pedagogy, but specifically we're going to be talking about a project that Mandi and I co-developed. We actually co-developed it in spring of 2024, but we weren't actually able to implement it until this spring. So we had a lot of time to think about it. So what you're going to get today is we're going to start by briefly introducing ourselves, our university, and the class. Then we're going to talk about the project itself, going to have a few student examples and responses, and then we'll end with a reflection and future ideas for revision. And of course, we will have time for questions too. Next slide. All right.
Okay, I'll introduce myself. My name is Mandi Goodsett, and I'm the Performing Arts and Humanities and OER and Copyright Librarian, as Ben said, at CSU. And I'm really passionate about open education, and so that's kind of how I got involved in this project.
Yes, and I am the director of first year writing, new this year, so yay. I'm also a senior college lecturer. I'm also an OER advocate, and I'm a realistic AI enthusiast, which will come up a little bit later. Even though this is about open pedagogy, AI does show up, so yay, get excited for that. Okay, so we are both working at Cleveland State University. It is a four-year urban university. We have a very diverse student population, so we have a lot of international, non-traditional, and first-generation students. Some big university changes are happening for fall 25, which really excites me and Mandi, but also made it a great time for us to sort of try out this new project. So some of the changes that are coming, we have some new general education requirements. We have some new integrated degrees, including English plus computer science. And we also have some new inquiry launch courses, which are essentially like first year student experience first year student experience classes. So all of that is happening right now, which again makes for a really great time for us to sort of do some innovation and playing around with class curriculum. And then at Cleveland State, we do have a lot of OER opportunities. So there are library small grants and initiatives. Also happening right now, or maybe already happened, is the Textbook Affordability Summer Symposium. And also, I just want to say that, the library small grant, that was what enabled me and Emily Zickel, my co-author, to create the textbook that Ben mentioned earlier. It was great, and all the librarians here were instrumental in helping us get that off the ground. Next slide. Okay, and then narrowing down even more for my classroom context. So this semester, me and Mandi developed this assignment for English 102, which is College Writing 2. It's the second class in the first year writing program sequence. So students often take either English 100 or 101 in the fall, and then they will often take English 102 in the spring. The focus in this class is information literacy, digital literacy, and also ethically integrating research. So anybody who knows anything about first year writing, it's a classic English 102 structure. More specifically, I taught one face-to-face section. I also taught one online section, but Mandi and I decided to just focus on the face-to-face this semester because it was just a little bit easier. So I had one section in spring 25. I started with 24 students and ended with 22 students. Most had majors in arts and sciences, so 9 of them. And then the second most popular major was health, with 7 students reporting that they are health majors. My classroom is paperless, so students always bring in a laptop or a notebook. Our university does offer free rentals, so if students don't have access to their own, then they can rent one through our university. And then AI is allowed within reason, and this is something that really I worked on over the course of the semester, but this project that we're going to be discussing is actually the first project in my English 102 class. So they really got a nice introduction to AI via me and Mandi. And then Mandi and I have a history of co-teaching. Also, Ben Richards has come into my class many times and done some co-teaching. So I'm pretty used to asking librarians to come into the classroom. So we were really excited to make it a little bit more official and work on it, weeks in advance instead of hours in advance. Next slide. Okay, so my role, I was the teacher. So I provided digital literacy and multimodal composing expertise and support because that's sort of where I land. I also provided scaffolded activities and assignments for students to continue learning and showcasing their new skills. So I was there obviously for the whole 16 weeks. And then Mandi?
Yes, so I was the librarian in this situation. So I provided copyright expertise, open licensing expertise, and support for students, especially because they were creating public-facing multimodal projects. So they needed to find reliable and openly licensed like images and other things to put into their project. So if you're a librarian and you're here, this is an area where I think our expertise can really be helpful. Yes, so to dive more into our instructor-librarian partnership, it was really essential. We've been collaborating in teaching since 2018, and I don't think either of us could have done this particular project without the other. We also really enjoyed the experience of co-teaching. There are lots of ways for instructors to successfully partner with librarians, but for us, what we did was we co-participated in the Open Education Network's Open Educational Practices Certificate program together, and now it's called the Certificate in Open Pedagogy. And that was a really great program that we recommend. We also co-wrote classroom activities and content and provided joint support for the students both in and outside the class. So if what we talk about related to open pedagogy sounds interesting to you and you're a faculty member, I recommend reaching out to your librarian who might be very excited for the opportunity to do something really meaningful and creative in the classroom, the way that I was excited when Melanie approached me about this project. So I just want to, some of you indicated you're not super familiar with open pedagogy, so I wanted to define it for you. Open pedagogy as a term has been defined in many ways over the years. Some have even argued that we can't define it, which is really tricky. One of the first definitions dates back to the 1970s, but we're going to use a definition that selfishly, we're going to use one that I co-developed with a group of colleagues for the EdTechnica Open Encyclopedia of Educational Technology, because we spent a lot of time reading and debating, and this is what we came up with. Open pedagogy is a set of teaching practices built on the foundation of open education, the open education community's shared values, which includes but is not limited to student agency, sharing, diversity and inclusion, peer learning, renewable assignments, co-creation and collaboration, and active and experiential learning. So in other words, it's less about specific activities or whether students choose to openly license their work or things like that. It's more about how you approach teaching with students with openness in mind and the values of the open community. So what does it actually look like? Another way to think about it is to think about traditional assignments. So for something like a paper or an essay or an annotated bibliography, the primary audience is usually the teacher. And very few people see or benefit from that paper after it's written. In general, the student is really motivated to do well on the paper by the grade they receive. And that doesn't mean that they're not learning from that kind of assignment, but open pedagogy offers another way. So with a renewable assignment, which has a public audience and is openly licensed, the audience is the public as well as the teacher. And once the work is done, it's shared openly and other people can also benefit from the learning. Could be people taking that class in a future semester. It could be just complete strangers who are interested in that subject and they get to learn about it along with your students. The student is still graded and they still might be motivated to get a good grade, but they are also motivated to produce high quality content that's accurate because they know that the public is going to be seeing it. And if anyone has done an open pedagogy project, I'd love to hear in the chat if you feel like it, how your students' reactions to the project were different, because I've heard a lot that students get a lot more invested when they know their work is going to be seen by a lot of other people. In open pedagogy, student learning can become incredibly authentic, and it can take place in real-world environments that are motivating and exciting for students. So some examples, it can take a lot of forms. So doing a class Wikipedia editing assignment, that's open pedagogy. Having students create course content, or ancillaries like coming together to produce ancillary or a quiz bank for future students to be quizzed is open pedagogy. Helping students create and openly licensed public-facing multimodal projects is also a great example of open pedagogy, and that's the example we're going to explore today. One of the most exciting things about open pedagogy is that it has the potential to promote social justice in ways that non-open teaching can't. So Sarah Lambert, in her 2018 article that many of you may have heard of at this point, describes 3 ways that open education can promote justice. So first is redistributive justice, and this is kind of what we usually think about. When a professor uses free materials, then no matter a student's financial situation, they're all able to access the course materials on day one. But then we can go beyond that to recognitive justice. That's about the kinds of materials that are used in the classroom. So with open materials, it's easier to intentionally include content of marginalized or underrepresented groups in the content that the students learn from. And then representational justice is maybe the one that's most closely tied to open pedagogy. This principle explores how open allows people from those underrepresented groups, some of whom are our students, to directly express their experiences in the course content that they create. So they actually have a voice. They can share their own perspectives, their own values, things like that in a real impactful way. And it exposes their classmates to new perspectives that might be missing from their traditional commercial textbook materials. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Melanie to talk about this assignment.
Thanks, Mandi, and thanks for that overview. So I just put a link in the chat to our slides, I think. It should be available. All of these things here are clickable, so you can see all of the assignments that we're going to be talking about, all of the presentations, and all of them are openly licensed, even if some of them don't actually have the license on them. So that's just, I will be sure to go back and add those one of these days. Okay, so after talking about open pedagogy, basically what Mandi and I sat down and did was we reimagined my first project in my English 102 class. So the original project focused on copyright and information literacy, and surprisingly, students really, really like learning about copyright. They really get a kick out of it. They think that it's interesting. They find that it relates to their own, experiences outside the classroom. And then to do that, we integrated workshops from Mandi about Creative Commons licenses and copyright and things like that. However, this was a very classic traditional essay. It was written in MLA, 3 to 5 pages. Essentially, it followed the 5-paragraph structure with an intro, body paragraphs, and conclusion. And of course, the audience was me. And so again, very great example of a disposable essay assignment. The revised project, on the other hand, it broadened the focus to include more areas. It integrated 2 more co-taught workshops, and then it culminated in an open resource that allowed students to express their ideas, voices, and experiences. Next slide. So the new open access project, it included 3 co-developed and co-taught workshops on 3 different focus areas, which I will get to in a minute. It also had 3 new in-class activities that help students practice and play with these new concepts. And then, of course, students still produced 1 final project, but this final project was multimodal, and they had the chance to share it with a real live audience and also a chance to decide if they wanted it to be openly licensed. So the 3 workshops with specific topics. The first one was copyright and academic publishing. So these 3 listings right here, these are the 3 topics that students were asked to choose to work with. So copyright and academic publishing, AI and academic research, and then multimodality. So Mandi covered the copyright and academic publishing. So we asked students questions like, how does copyright work? How does traditional academic publishing work? And then what is open access publishing and why might it be valuable? And then the second presentation was AI and academic research, which Mandi again developed an awesome lesson. And so where in the research process can AI help? What are the ethical uses of AI? And then what AI tools are worth trying? And then lastly was multimodality and CC licenses. So I really took over the multimodal part just because that's part of my expertise. But I talked about things like what does it mean to compose a multimodal text? And then I drew from Mandi's pre-existing presentations to talk about CC licenses and why people might use them, where you can find them, and how they might be integrated. And I guess I should stop for 1 second and say that multimodality refers to integrating various modes of communication. So anything can be multimodal, but in this respect, generally students envision it as things like a website or a TikTok video or a podcast, something like that. Basically anything outside the traditional essay. Although again, arguably a traditional essay is still multimodal. When we talk about it and present it, we're really trying to get students to use and create texts that don't just emphasize like text, alphabetic text, but emphasize other modes. Okay. And then our 3 in-class activities that we co-developed. The first one was visualizing closed versus opened. So this is actually, I gave students the opportunity to either visualize using markers and paper, or they could use something like Canva, but they were asked to either represent closed versus open academic publishing or closed copyright versus open copyright. So we're really trying to get them to understand those 2 concepts. The second is practicing what you've learned. So this is a 3-part activity. The first part of it asks them to explore Google Scholar, a library database, and AI to find research on their topic, but they had to compare the outputs of those 3 things. So they were using the same terms for each of those 3 tools, but then they had to reflect on, what was it giving them? How was Google Scholar different from AI? How was AI similar to a library database? Things like that. And then lastly, I just had a classic multimodal composing outline template where students were able to map out basically what their multimodal text was going to be. And again, they had a chance to either do a handwritten outline or they could do a digital outline. So these are 2 examples of the visualization, that my students created. So on the left, the tall one is closed versus open. So you can see there that they had some fun with stickers and things like that. And then the bigger one is open and closed academic publishing models. I really appreciate the students' approach on that one because they have, the pros of open, they have information about closed parts, but then the overlap is sort of showing that where those 2 things overlap. So for instance, academic publishing allows for people to find scholarly information and both undergo a peer review process before publishing. So I just really like that. And students really like getting to play with markers in class. Next. And then after we completed those 3 things, so in terms of scaffolding, we had presentations, activities, and then we had them work on their final projects. So their first step was to choose and research their topics. So within the realm of copyright and academic publishing, AI and academic research, or multimodality and creative licenses. So students could pick a lot of different things within those giant umbrellas, but they kind of had to still be somewhere in the realm of those topics. Once they chose their topics and did some research, then they had to design their multimodal text. And that multimodal text had to showcase their rhetorical knowledge and rhetorical awareness. So knowing, how does their audience affect what they're going to say? How does what they're going to say affect what type of text they choose to create? And then lastly, they had to decide whether or not if they wanted to use a Creative Commons license. All right, and then I have a couple examples here. So overall, 15 people produced infographics. It was by far the most popular. 3 students produced podcasts, 3 composed videos, and 1 has a hand-drawn cartoon right here. So this is her hand-drawn cartoon titled Artists versus AI. So she's bringing in creative or copyright and the questions with AI and the copyright issues that we've all been sort of discussing. To the right, we have open access publishing in the medical world. So the student chose to focus on open access publishing, but she chose to narrow it down into her field, her major that she's looking for. So that's just page 1. She actually had a 2-page infographic. And then we have a little bit more multimodal or a little bit more intense examples. So we have the open access podcast the student created. She used AI to create that image with a cat and a lock, which I love, and a rainbow. And so her title of her episode was how OERs benefit young adults. And then the bottom corner there, AI is already shaping major aspects of our lives, was a video that a student created all about AI and bias in academic research. So all of these examples here were used with students' permission, but it really just shows that they were really excited to pick topics about things that maybe you wouldn't think they would be excited to talk about. Yes, next, please. Go ahead, Mandy.
Okay. Yeah, some of them chose to talk about copyright, and I was just so happy about that. So I had a blast teaching with Melanie, as always, and I've never really had that opportunity to co-teach a whole module like that, so it was really wonderful. I think it worked well because we're both really flexible in how we approach teaching, and we're committed to interactive learning experiences, so it really worked well for us. I also think that with open pedagogy, like in this example, I had the opportunity to teach students important information literacy skills and knowledge that I don't usually get to talk about. So, how information has value, and even just how information is created. These are things I don't usually get to talk about. And then finally, I do a lot of teaching as a librarian, and so it was really exciting to see the passion that students had for this kind of assignment, and for their final creation. And I had one student who actually met with me just to like talk about her project and like before she turned it in to make sure to get my advice. They were really eager to do a good job, so that was really gratifying.
Yeah, and just sort of piggybacking on what Mandy just said, I definitely saw students' enthusiasm for our collaboration. Like, I think oftentimes students don't realize that their teachers or librarians are people. So a lot of them were really excited to see us interacting in the classroom, joking around, things like that. Also making mistakes and then problem solving right then and there. So like really showcasing that, nobody's perfect and everything's a process. Also, it was a great opportunity to add one-shot lessons, which promoted flexibility and openness. So for instance, Mandy came in with a beautifully prepared lesson, and in the middle of it, I was like, hey, can you like shift gears and talk about Mendeley for a second, which is a free source saving resource. And so she just like, switched gears and students had an opportunity to take that one-shot lesson, which was awesome. And then, similar to how Mandy ended, students were just really excited about their work. So I had the opportunity to share quite a few of these with like the dean of our college. They had the opportunity to go to something that's called the Digital Student Showcase here on campus, where students are allowed to share their multimodal work. And I had three students actually participate in that. And I should say that Ben Richards is the one who put that on, and it's awesome. But so students were so proud of their work that something that they did in the beginning of the semester, they still wanted to present up about it at the end of the semester in our student center in real time with real people and talk about their work, which was pretty cool. Okay, and then I did ask students like one or two questions about what they experienced. This was just a survey. It was not anonymous, unfortunately, just because I graded it. It was part of the reflective process, but I asked them how they felt about the use of co-teaching. I reminded them that we did co-teaching because they often forget. And then I asked them if they found it effective or not. And so 14 of the responses said that they felt that there was increased engagement and learning benefits. 2 felt that they really valued the different teaching styles. And then 6 of them said that there was like neutral or minimal impact on learning. And then these are some actual student responses. So under the theme of increased engagement in learning, the students wrote, I thought it was really cool to see 2 educators teaching about what they're passionate about, having 2 different perspectives added to the educational experience. The next student said that it kept them engaged and made them want to learn more about it. In terms of valuing different teaching styles, student C said that it made it easier to understand Creative Commons licenses. We'll come back to that later. And student D thought it was effective, especially with learning Mendeley, which was, again, something we just did sort of just because we were in the room together. It wasn't planned. And then the neutral ones, it wasn't anything really negative. They were just like, I felt like it was fine, right? The teaching method was fine. I don't have a strong opinion either way. So yeah, so again, students overall really like this. When we created this presentation, the grades hadn't been submitted yet. So I also found out later, like 2 weeks ago, that many students cited this as their favorite project of the semester. So out of 22 students, I think 9 of them said that it was their favorite, which is almost half, which is pretty cool. Next. Sorry. And then another thing that I asked them about was their understanding of and willingness to use Creative Commons licenses for their work. This is where things get a little bit dicier. So I asked them, did you use Creative Commons in your project? 9 of them said no. 8 of them said, I don't know. 7 of them said yes, but only 2 of them actually included a license, which shows that there's some discrepancy there and there's some more room for work. But I did put a screenshot here of what I thought was the best example of a Creative Commons license. So we had one that was like exactly what we wanted, but that's okay. Room to grow. Next slide. All right, and then some of the things that we need to work on, or what we've learned, is we need to focus on helping students understand those Creative Commons licenses. This project was actually only about 4 weeks, which is pretty short. So it was actually closer to about 3.5. So we really scaffolded information quickly. And so we did overwhelm students a bit. And so earlier, Liza, hello, Liza. Thanks for being here. I saw that Liza asked, why did students pick the infographics? I think one of them was we kind of overwhelmed them with information. And I think they thought that the infographic would be easier. But like the example that I showed you, that student worked on that infographic a lot. But yeah, I definitely think time constraints was one of the reasons that student gravitated more towards the infographics. And then Mandi and I discussed that we need to provide some clearer guidelines on why students are creating these texts. So originally, me and Mandi really wanted them to be producing something that other students could learn from, but that kind of got lost in the shuffle. So her and I are going to talk about this over the summer and figure out if we need to sort of resituate a few things to help students in that way. And then Mandi, what were we excited about?
We were excited about a lot of things. So we've already mentioned a lot of these, but students were engaging with topics they might not choose for themselves normally. Like for example, the discussions we had about open access publishing were totally new to them. They had no idea. They didn't really understand how academic research is published at all. So for them to dive into those topics was really cool. And then students had a lot of passion for open education, and that came through in open access. They actually were like a little lukewarm about AI in their responses, which was interesting, a little more critical. And I don't know if that was because of how we taught it. It was just kind of their impressions. And then, as I mentioned, we had more students meeting with me, I think, and using the library because of my increased involvement in the class. I think they felt a little more comfortable coming to see me and ask questions, which was really great. That's something we definitely want to see more of.
Yeah, and just to jump on what, well, will you go back, Mandi? I'm sorry.
Sure, sure.
And just to jump on what Mandi was just saying, by the end of the semester, so Mandi had been to my class twice, and then Ben was invited to come. No, I'm sorry, Mandi was there 3 times. Ben was invited to come twice. And by the end, like I had so many more students citing that they went to the library on their own as a way to actually get help with various things, which I've been teaching for 13 years at Cleveland State, and it's always a struggle to get them to go to the library without like forcing them to do it. So I think that part of this project and the idea of collaborating and co-teaching with librarians is that it's really increasing students' awareness of what they can get out of the library, which is very cool. And then just real quick about the AI stuff. So over the course of the semester, I did integrate more AI opportunities, but students were never forced to use AI. So they were allowed to use it for some peer reviews, but it was structured and scaffolded in a way that we felt was ethical, but it was a thing that we discussed. I've learned a lot of this from Liza Long, who is here and she's in the chat. And so students by the end, many of them were like, yeah, I like it, but human peer reviews better. Or, I really like Google Scholar or the library database better for searching for research and things like that. So their passion for AI never really increased all that much, and their passion for free resources definitely continued to be high. And then some of our future plans, we need some more data. Also, I was only teaching one class, so we need more students and we need to do this a few more times. As I said before, Mandi and I are going to be meeting this summer to just really look at all of the student projects. She hasn't got to see all of the projects yet, so we're going to talk about, what went well, what could we do better, thinking about ways to improve our learning outcomes and things of that nature. So, yeah. Mandi, do you have anything to add to our future plans?
No, just that, with something this kind of it was like a bigger project. There were definitely things we thought we should do that differently next time, but I think that's totally normal, and we hopefully will have the opportunity to try again and make changes. So
We will have the opportunity. I'm teaching it in the fall.
we will. We will.
All right. Thank you all so much.
Yes, I added this question. If anybody is interested, we would love to hear in the chat if you want, just like something that you would take away from the session. How doable do you think this might be for your class if you're a faculty member or instructor, or if you're a librarian or other support person in academia? Like, is there a way for you to support this kind of work? I know that I definitely lucked out big time having Melanie as a collaborator, and not everybody has that, but are there ways to build those connections?
Also, too, happy to answer any other questions if you want to put them in the chat or if you just want to yell them out.
Yeah,
noticed-
Dr. Corey, yeah.
Sorry.
He says I would be interested in trying it, but I have very little experience creating and using multimodal assignments.
I would say one thing about assignments like this. A lot of times I get questions, instructors will say things like, I'm not very tech savvy, or I don't know how to do that. I don't either. Like, I am not an expert technology user. I am getting much better at talking about how students can be expert technology users. So don't think that you need to know how to, use all these different programs. Like, that's the beautiful thing about using an open pedagogy project like this, is because students collaborate with each other. They ask each other questions about the technologies. And then, of course, collaborating with the library, you can send them to the library. I did that a lot. I was like, it's not my expertise. Go see this. So you don't need to be an expert to do something like this, I would say. But collaboration is key.
Yes, happy to support you in the library. Ruth had a question. Do you disclose to students that their responses would be placed into ChatGPT for analysis?
Yes, I did. So one of the things that I've done is students can opt out anytime that they don't want responses used in any way, shape, or form. You'll notice that a few of my projects or a few of my assignment sheets might say that something was co-created with ChatGPT. I let students know that. I know that just came out this week. I think somebody shared that in the chat the last session. I'm very upfront about what or how I'm using AI and why I'm using it. And I really discussed the fact that I'm using it in ways that just saves me a little bit of time, but not in things that are like content creation or things that I find is like a creative endeavor. So Ruth, to answer your question, yes, I did let them know that that was going to happen, and they were able to opt out if they did not want to be part of that.
We also have a lot of votes for Zotero instead of Mendeley. I offered to talk about Zotero, but Melanie was like, no, I want to have Mendeley.
I like that.
Mendeley is free also.
Yes, it has more space than Zotero.
Thank you all for the nice comments. So people are recognizing that collaborating with your librarian is really great. And we have someone saying, I would love to do something like this as a librarian. So I think there is a way for us to come together and benefit from the expertise of both. And then we have reinforce the value of scaffolding, yes. And then this is an interesting comment. Open or not, students still want quick assignments. So they chose infographics because it's easy. That helps them with what they're accountable for. So like Mendeley also makes it quicker and easier. I don't know. I feel like that's just a human impulse to make it quick and easy. But I do think we chipped away a little bit at just kind of like, I want to do this for the grade, and I want to instead more toward, I want to do this because I'm interested in it. And I think that's ultimately the goal with teaching, is can we get students to want to learn rather than want to get a certain grade or whatever.
Yeah, this is great. Mandi, will you scroll down on the responses real fast? I can't see them. Okay.
Yeah, I think most of them. Any other questions for us? We go to the next page. I think we have our contact information. So if you have other questions or if you want to get any resources from us, we have the slides in Discord and we put them in the chat. But if you're an interested librarian or instructor and you want to talk more, we're very happy to chat.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.